For this example, we have to find the values of x and y. So let's look at the first part. Here we have a 45-degree angle and we have a 90-degree angle. That means that the third angle is going to be forced to be 45 since the interior angles of a triangle add up to 180 degrees. Now, since we have a 45, 45, 90 right triangle, we can apply special ratios. So we're going to avoid using the Pythagorean theorem. Now, the special ratio for a 45, 45, 90 has to do with the relationship between the leg and the hypotenuse. If you have the leg, in order to get to the hypotenuse, you're going to have to multiply it by the square root of 2. However, if you have the hypotenuse and you want to travel and get the leg, you're going to do the opposite. You're going to be dividing by the square root of 2. Now, recall that the hypotenuse is going to be the length that's across 90-degree angles. So 4 multiplied by the square root of 2, that's going to be your hypotenuse. Because we have 45 degrees and 45 degrees, that means that the opposite, these two lengths have to be the same. So they're both considered to be L, the leg. For this example, we have the hypotenuse. So to get x and to get y, all we need to do is just divide it by the square root of 2. So here, we get 4 square root of 2 divided by the square root of 2. Here, the square root of 2 is going to cancel out with the square root of 2, so we get 4. Meaning that x is going to equal 4. And y is also going to equal 4. Part 2 is very similar. Here we have a 45-degree angle and we have a 90-degree angle, so the third angle is forced to be 45. Now, the lengths that are across 45 degrees, those are called L. And the length that's across the 90-degree angle, that's going to be called your H. So in this example, we also have the hypotenuse. So to get to the legs, we have to divide by the square root of 2. So I'm going to get 7, and I'm going to divide it by the square root of 2. Now here, I'm going to leave it like this, unsimplified. You could give me a decimal approximation, but I'm not going to require it. And depending on what class you are taking, sometimes your instructor might want you to rationalize the denominator, but for our purposes, I am going to allow you to write it like this. So here, x is equal to 7 divided by the square root of 2, and y is also 7 divided by the square root of 2. Let's look at another type of special right triangle. So here we have a 30-degree angle and we have a 90-degree angle. That means that the third angle is going to be required, or it's going to be forced to be 60 degrees, since again, the three interior angles of a triangle need to add up to 180. Now, the length that's across 90 degrees, recall that that's going to be called the hypotenuse, so I'm going to label it H. The length that's across 30 degrees, we're going to call that the small leg. So I'm going to label it S. And then the length that's across 60 degrees, that's going to be the long leg. So I'm going to call it L. For a 30, 60, 90 right triangle, we have to be aware of these two ratios. The first one has to do with the small length and the hypotenuse. If we have the small length, we can multiply it by 2 and get the hypotenuse. If we have the hypotenuse, we can get the small length by dividing it by 2. The other relationship is between the small length and the long length. To get from the small to the long, we just multiply by root 3. To get from the long to the small, we divide by root 3. So here's an example. For part 1, they give us 15. So we have H. Since we have H, we can get the small length by dividing the hypotenuse by 2. So here, I have H, and I'm going to travel to the small length by getting 15 and dividing it by 2. So x is going to equal 15 over 2. I'm going to leave it unsimplified as an improper fraction, because now, since I have the small length, I can get the long length. So from small, I can go to the long length if I multiply by root 3. So here, y is going to equal 15 over 2 multiplied by square root of 3. Let's continue to practice with part 2. So here I have a 30-degree angle and I have a 90-degree angle, which forces the third angle to be 60 degrees. Next, I'm going to label all of the lengths, beginning with the hypotenuse. So the length that's across 90 degrees, that's going to be labeled as h. And then the length that's across 30 degrees, that's going to be called the small side. So I'm going to label it S. And the length that's across 60 degrees, that's going to be the longer leg. So I'm going to label it as L. Now I'm going to use these ratios to find X and Y. For this example, it looks like we have the long leg. So we have the ratio from long to small. And to do this, we're going to have to divide by root 3. So again, to get from the long to the small, we're going to get this value of 6, and we're going to divide it by the root of 3. So x is going to be equal to 6 over root 3. Now that we have the small length, we can get to the hypotenuse. From small to hypotenuse, we multiply it by the 2. So we get 6 root 3. And if we multiply the 6 by 2, we're going to get a total of 12 root 3. And that would be the value of y.